get started. Just a quick background. The name of this project is Working Class Heroes. The heroes, of course, are anonymous, and you might say the whole working class is made up of heroes. But we do have some particular people in mind, and the particular people that we're referring to are the people who wrote these songs. Okay? We'll get into the details of those people, the actual writers of these songs, as we progress through the repertoire, the songs that they actually wrote. And we'll talk a little bit about the conditions that they were actually written in. In other words, the struggles that these people were engaged in when they wrote these songs. But before doing so, just have to mention a couple things about how the project began. Because in 2017, it happened to be the 50th anniversary of the publication of a songbook by the name of Hard-Hitting Songs for Hard-Hit People. This book was actually put together by Alan Lomax, Woody Guthrie, and Pete Seeger, who maybe some of you know. And the songs themselves, however, were by and large written in the 20s and 30s. The book was completed in 1941 and lay in drawers, kitchen cupboards, for the next 25 years. And so the actual songbook was being commemorated. Its 50th anniversary of publication was 2017, and we were invited by the Brooklyn Folk Festival to put together a representative sampling of these songs to commemorate this great songbook. Part of the reason for that was that the Brooklyn Folk Festival was itself a product of young people, some of whom were only born in the 21st century, actually being inspired by folk music, banjos and fiddles, by a movie called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And they knew nothing, this generation, about this songbook, these songs, or any of the history that went into what might be called the first folk music revival, which took place in the 30s. There have been two big folk music revivals in the United States, in the 30s and the 60s, and then all of a sudden, hey, Richard, come on in!
It took me forever to find this room. The working class is always hiding somewhere.
Right. That's it.
Or they're trying to hide.
That's it. So, in any case, it was a combination of these various different cultural events that led to us selecting a group of these songs from that songbook, Hard-Hitting Songs for Hard-Hit People. And we thought it was going to be a one-off. We just played these songs at this festival, and the young people would get a chance to hear like some of the sources of their inspiration, because as you'll notice, some of the songs actually appeared in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, with different lyrics, because they are classic traditional American folk songs. And we'll talk about that when we get to them. But ultimately, we were invited to perform at a couple of other festivals, including the James Connolly Festival in Dublin, Ireland in 2017. And so we had to put together more songs. We had to go back to the songbook, pull out more songs so that we could actually have a 2-hour set. And that is the beginning of this project, which we ended up putting together into this songbook. So now we're going to begin with a song by Sarah Ogan Gunning, who we'll talk about in a minute, called Come All You Coal Miners.
Come all you coal miners, wherever you may be, and listen to a story that I relate to thee. My name is nothing extra, but the truth to you I tell. I am a coal miner's wife, and I'm sure I wish you well. Coal mining is the most dangerous work in our land today, with plenty of dirty slaving work and very little pay. Coal miners, won't you wake up and open your eyes and see what the dirty capitalist system is doing to you and me. They take your very lifeblood, they take our children's lives, take fathers away from children and husbands away from wives. Coal miners, won't you organize wherever you may be and make this a land of freedom for workers like you and me? Dear miners, they will slave you till you can't work no more. And what will you get for your living but $1 at the company store? A tumble-down shack to live in, rain and snow pours in the tub. You have to pay the company rent, your paying never stops. I am a coal miner's wife, and I'm sure I'll wish you well. Let's sink this capitalist system in the darkest pits of hell. Ow!
Sarah Ogan Gunning was the wife of a coal miner, as the song says, and she wrote these songs herself to support the mine workers' struggle that was taking place, what's come to be known as the Harlan County War. It went on from 1931 until 1939, and Sarah Ogan Gunning and her family were deeply involved in that. And this next song was one of those that appeared in the Oh Brother Where Art Thou movie with a somewhat different text. And this is also by Sarah Ogan Gunning. It's called Girl of Constant Sorrow.
She was born and raised.
My mother, I hate to leave her. Mother dear, now is dead. But I hate to go and leave her. So my
oh yes, her children do their prayer.
Well, I told they're always ragged, and our feet are always bare. And I know if there's a heaven that we all are going there.
Oh yes, we all are going there.
Goodbye, my friends, I hate to leave you. It grieves me so that we must part. For I know we are hungry. Oh, it almost breaks my heart.
Oh
song also appeared in that movie. In the original form, it was actually learned, like many of these songs, it was an old slave song, actually, written by slaves, and sung by various Baptist or Methodist congregations in the South. And obviously that's where Sarah Ogan Gunning learned many of her songs. And she put her own words to it during the strike. And it's called Come On Friends and Let's Go Down.
Somebody asked about singing, please do. The words are, come on friends, and let's go down, let's go down, let's go down. Come on friends, and let's go down, down on the picket line. That's the chorus. Okay. Come on friends, and let's go down, let's go down, let's go down. Come on friends, and let's go down, down on the picket line. There you go, sing. Come on friends, and let's go down, let's go down, let's go down. Come on friends, and let's go down, down on the picket line. As I went down on the picket line to keep them scabs out of their mind. Who's a going to win that strike? Come on and we'll show you the way to sing. Come on friends and let's go down, let's go down, let's go down. Come on friends and let's go down, down on the picket line. Went out one morning before daylight, and I was sure we'd have a fight, but the capitalist scurvy run away, and we went back the very next day. Sing it! Come on friends and let's go down, let's go down, let's go down. Come on friends and let's go down, down the picket line. We all went out on the railroad track to beat them scabs and turn them back. We win that strike, I'm glad to say. Come on and we'll show you the way. Sing it. Come on friends and let's go down, let's go down, let's go down. Come on friends and let's go down, down on the picket line. Yeah. Come on friends and let's go down, let's go down, let's go down. Come on friends and let's go down, down on the picket line. One more time, baby. Come on friends and let's go down, let's go down, let's go down. Come on friends and let's go down, down on the picket line.
Now this next song was written by the half-sister of Sarah Ogan Gunning. Her name was Aunt Molly Jackson. Actually, she was born Mary Magdalene Garland, and she met a miner by the name of Bill Jackson, which is where she got her last name. But the name Aunt Molly came because she was a midwife and delivered hundreds of babies in the Appalachians and Harlan County and other parts of that state. And she was a notorious union leader and organizer, went to jail a number of times, and like the rest of her family was eventually driven out of the whole region by the mine owners and so on during this struggle. And she wrote this song, I Am a Union Woman, which contains a very important line where she says, I was raised in old Kentucky, Kentucky born and bred, and when I joined the Union they called me a Russian Red. And this was taking place in the late 20s, early 30s. Yeah. The Russian Revolution was familiar to the whole world, including the workers in Kentucky. Otherwise, the epithet Russian Red from the coal bosses would not have made any difference. It's obvious. And in fact, doing the research on this album and the songbook and getting into all the background of this, a number of commentators who were active at that time in that labor struggle, including her brother Jim, talked about the misconceptions and the distortions about the local folk, the people in Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, where the mine struggle was going on. And the fact that there were many immigrant workers, recent immigrants from Poland, other places, also working in the mines, that there were many black miners who were being organized at the same time by the NMU. This is the name of the union that she's talking about, the National Miners Union, which was actually initiated on the part by the Communist Party at a time when the United Mine Workers had pulled out. The intense struggle in the coal fields had reached the point where it was open warfare, and the UMW had tried, and other unions had tried to organize without success. And so the Communist Party sent in young organizers to start the NMU. And this is really what the Harlan County War was about, was this effort to organize the NMU. So when she talks about join the NMU, that's what she's referring to. I am a union.
Is it okay to sing along? Some of us know.
No, of course. I am a union woman, as brave as I can be. I do not like the bosses, and the bosses don't like me.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU. Join the NMU.
come and
Join the NMU.
I was raised in old Kentucky, Kentucky born and bred. And when I joined the union, well, they called me Russian Red.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
oh yeah.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
My husband asked the boss for a job. These is the words he said. Bill Jackson, I can't work you, sir, 'cause your wife's a Russian Red.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
right now.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
This is the worst times that I have ever saw. You get shut down by Handcox, you get framed up by the law. Oh yeah.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
with me.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
Our bosses ride fine horses, and we walk in the mud. Their banner is a dollar sign, and ours is striped with blood.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
with me.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
if you want to get your freedom, also your liberty. Join the dear old NMU and come along with me right now.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
with me.
Join the NMU.
Come and
Join the NMU.
Thank you. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what's the relationship between that song and which side are you on? 'Cause
The relationship is Lay the Lily Low. Lay the Lily Low was
the
a
old
Christian hymn,
traditional, yeah.
and that, like almost all these songs, in fact, all these songs except one, is the basis of this. What's different is not the music, it's the text.
Yeah, the lyrics,
And so Florence Reese was also in the Harlan County War,
right.
and knew Aunt Molly Jackson and all the rest of it. They all shared the same
Yeah.
songs.
Yeah.
They all knew the same songs.
That's right.
And in fact, the whole purpose of singing in this sense was that people participated. It was not so much a question of an audience, and this next song was actually, speaking of its original musical source, was a Carter Family tune, Sailor Boy, Sailor on the Deep Blue Sea. Some controversy over what the actual musical source was. But Sarah Ogan Gunning wrote it, and she said it just came to her, which is what happens when you've sung songs all your life. It just came to her with this text. And I have to say that it was a great, you might say, pleasure for us to actually sing this song at a demonstration on what is called the Bundesplatz, which is it's in front of the Parliament building in Switzerland, in Bern, directly facing the Swiss National Bank. Because this song is I Hate the Capitalist System.
I hate the capitalist system. I tell you the reason why. They cause me so much suffering and my dearest friends to die. My husband was a coal miner. He worked and risked his life to try to support 3 children, himself, his mother and wife. Singing it. Oh, come on, tell the truth. And we repeat. Oh, come on, tell the truth. I had a blue-eyed baby, the darling of my heart. But from my little darling, her mother had to part. The rich and mighty capitalists, they dress in jewels and silk. But my darling blue-eyed baby, she starved to death for milk. Oh, come on, tell the truth. Oh, come on, tell the truth. I had a darling mother, for her I often cried. But with these rotting conditions, my mother, she had to die. They call this a land of plenty. To them, I guess it's true. But that's to the rich old capitalists, not workers like me and you. Oh, come on, tell the truth. Oh, come on, tell the truth. Oh, what can you do about it? To these men of power and might, I tell you, Mr. Capitalist, I'm gonna fight, 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 yeah. I said, what can you do about it? To these men of power and might, I tell you, Mr. Capitalist, I'm gonna fight, 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 yeah. I'm gonna fight, 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 yes I will. I'm gonna fight, 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 yeah. I'm gonna fight, 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 take it out. I'm gonna fight, 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 yeah. I'm gonna fight, 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 yes I will. I'm gonna fight, 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 yeah, yeah. Fight, 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 oh. Say, whoa, come on, tell the truth. Oh, come on, tell the truth. Yeah, thank you.
Now the next one is actually by Woody Guthrie. It's one of the only songs in this collection that was not written by a person directly engaged in a struggle. And of course, he's world famous now on a postage stamp. But like so many of his songs, he took this from a traditional song. In fact, it's a children's song. People may remember it. It's called Mama Don't Allow No Music Around Here. So he goes, Mama Don't Allow No bourgeois hanging around. Come here, Mama, Mama, take a look at Kate, coming down the road in a Cadillac 8. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. Hardly recognize her in that rig, a feather bow and a curly wig. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. No, Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. No, Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. Big fat man with a pocket full of money, he took my liquor and he took my honey. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. Banker come to take my farm, he took my gal off under his arm. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. No, Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. No, Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. Now listen, folks. Rich man swagger, big and proud, but thinks he's smart, but he's just loud. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. Thinks we're laughing at his jokes, but we're just seeing through the hoax. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. No, Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. No, Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. I'm just an old hard-working man. I ride 'em like a fight and do the best I can. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. I take my stand at the Union Hall. An injury to one is an injury to all. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. No, Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. No, Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow them hanging round. Mama don't allow no bush walls hanging round. All right. Now the next song was written by Jim Garland, who is Sarah Ogan Gunning's brother and Aunt Molly Jackson's half-brother. He was a coal miner, organizer, fighter, and he wrote this song after attending a memorial of 25,000 people in Bronx Stadium for a young man named Harry Sims who was murdered in Kentucky in the middle of this strike. Harry Sims was a working class kid from Springfield, Massachusetts, went to work in the textile mills of Massachusetts at a young age, went on to join the Young Communist League, came down to Alabama to organize the sharecroppers, who were fighting to organize the sharecroppers union, defended cases of black people being lynched and persecuted in the South, and then moved over during the Harlan County struggle to organize relief, food, clothing, shelter. Became good friends of Jim Garland, and to his dying day, Jim thought that the bullet that was taken by Harry Sims was meant for him. This is called The Murder of Harry Sims. Comrades, listen to my story. Comrades, listen to my song. I'll tell you of the hero who now is dead and gone. I'll tell you of the young boy whose age was just 19. He was the bravest Union man that I have ever seen. Harry Sims, he was a pal of mine. We labored side by side, expecting to be shot inside or taken for a ride by the cold bosses, gun thugs who roam from town to town to shoot and kill our comrades wherever they may be found. Harry Sims and I were partied at 5 o'clock that day. Be careful, my dear comrade, to Harry I did say. I must do my duty, was his reply to me. If I get killed by gun thugs, well, don't grieve after me. Huh! Harry Sims was walking up the track this bright sunshiny day. He was a youth of courage, his step was light and gay. We did not know the gun thugs was hiding on the way to kill our dear young comrade this bright sunshiny day. Harry Sims was killed on Brush Creek in 1932. He organized the YCL, also the NMU. He gave his life in struggle, that was all that he could do. He died to save the Union, also for me and you. Comrades, we must vow today that this is one thing we must do. Must organize the miners and the dear old NMU. Get 1 million volunteers to the YCL and set this rotten system in the deepest pits of hell. And set this rotten system in the deepest pits of things to say about this. Not only this song, but actually all of them in one way or another. There's a lot of talk about authenticity when you get into folk music. And when you start discovering who's crying the loudest about authenticity and not talking about these songs, you start to become aware of how this stuff was actually suppressed. You understand what I'm saying? Because there's nothing wrong with the music here. All the music is the same music that is considered authentic. These people were not outside agitators. These people were not coming from some other planet or intellectuals from New York. These are the people who came out of these struggles directly. They were born and raised in Kentucky or Tennessee or Arkansas or wherever. And this is part of what this is about, actually. And part of why it was important to us to bring it to young people who are just becoming interested in folk music, because they need to understand what these stories are really about and where this American music actually came from. And the next song is particularly poignant in that regard because it was written by a woman named May Wiggins. And May Wiggins was a leader of the textile workers in Gastonia, North Carolina. She was not only a member and leader of the Union, she was also a member and a leader of the International Labor Defense, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. She was shot in the heart, leaving a Union meeting at the age of 29. She'd already watched 4 of her children die of whooping cough because the boss would not change her shift. She had to work and could not take care of her children. She left 5 more orphans. And this was, again, a major battle that took place in Gastonia, the largest mill, the Lorry Mill. It was called the largest mill of its kind in the world at that time. And she was singled out, partly because of her leadership in the strike, but also because she wrote songs. And there are numerous testimonies from fellow workers and people that knew her at the time that they was out to get Ellie Mae because she would sing and bring us all together. And this is one of the songs that she wrote. It's probably her most famous. Pete Seeger sang it. It's called The Mill Mother's Song.
We'll leave our home in the morning. We kiss our children goodbye. While we slave for the buses, our children scream and cry. And when we draw our money, our grocery bills to pay, not a cent to spend for clothing, not a cent to lay away. And on that very evening, our little son will say, I need some shoes, dear mother, and so the sister May. How it grieves the heart of a mother, you everyone must know. What we can't buy for our children, our wages are too low. It is for our little children that seem to us so dear. But for us nor them dear workers, the buses do not care. But understand our workers, our union they do fear. Let's stand together, workers, and have a union here. Now listen to me, workers, both women and men. We are sure to win our union if all would enter in. I hope this will be a warning. I hope you will understand and help us win our victory and lend to us a hand. Yes, help us win our victory and lend to us your hand.
Now, I mentioned that Ella was a leader of the ILD. The ILD was the International Labor Defense, which was an organization that was started by the Red International, and it was built to defend the leaders of the working class who were being imprisoned, particularly in the South, but actually all over. They defended Sacco and Vanzetti, for example, in the North. They also took up the case of the Scottsboro Boys, a very famous case of 9 black youth who were charged with raping a white woman, and this trial went on forever, became a huge cause célèbre. And they took on the defense of numerous leaders of these strikes, including the one that Ella Mae was involved with. And that's why she took up the position of the secretary of the ILD in Gastonia, and wrote this song, which again is was to some old Christian hymn, which I couldn't find, so we put our own music to it. But the reason that we did it this way actually is because one of the outstanding features of Ella Mae's life and work was that she, in a deeply divided South, stood with the black workers. She wanted the union to integrate. She went on they used to separate the black and white workers by a line down the middle in the union meetings, and she would go on the black side of the Union. Another reason why she was targeted by the bosses. And this is her song called Toiling on Life's Pilgrim Pathway.
Toiling on life's pilgrim pathway, wheresoever you may be, it will help you fellow workers if you will join the ILD. Come and join the ILD. Come and join the ILD. It will help to win the victory if you will join the ILD. When the bosses cut your wages and you tore the labor free, come and join the textile union, also join the ILD. Come and join the ILD. Come and join the ILD. It will help to win the victory if you will join the ILD. Now our leaders are in prison, but I hope they will soon be free. Come and join the textile union, also join the ILD. Hey, come and join the ILD. Come and join the ILD. It will help to win the victory if you will join the ILD. Now the South is hedged in darkness, although they begin to see. Come and join the textile union, also join the ILD. Hey, come and join the ILD. Come and join the ILD. It will help to win the victory if you will join the ILD. It will help to win the victory if you will join the ILD.
All right. This next one is by another hero by the name of John Handcox. John Handcox was a leader, an organizer of the Southern Tenant Farmers Union, which was a very important organization that actually at one time spanned several states and had upwards of 30,000 members, and actually waged one great strike in 1935. It's a long story, but he was well known because of his songwriting. He actually went around the country singing songs to raise money, raise attention throughout the rest of the country, and he ended up being recorded by Charles Seeger, Pete Seeger's father, at the Library of Congress, which is why some of these songs were actually available, although he died in 1992. It's a long story. They couldn't even find him. He had to leave Arkansas, where he was from, due to the repression that came following the defeat of the struggles there. He ended up in San Diego, kept on writing songs until he was 88. Wrote a couple songs in the 1980s against Ronald Reagan. Anyway, this is another old song, old slave song, which you'll recognize. He put his own little touch to it, and it's called No More Mourning. I'll be buried in my grave. Take my said no more weeping,
No more,
no more weeping,
no more.
no more weeping. After a while, and before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. Take my place with those who love the fought before.
Sing it, brother, sing.
No more sorrow,
No more,
no more sorrow,
no, no, no more sorrow.
no more sorrow.
No more.
After a while, and before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. Take my place with those who love and fought before.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Ah, freedom. After a while, before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. Take my place with those who love and fought before.
I said no more slavery,
No more,
no more slavery,
no more.
no more slavery.
Yeah.
After a while, said before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. Take my place with those who love and fought before. But take my place with those who love and fought before. Take my place with those who loved and fought Now we're running out of time here, so we got to finish with one song. We cannot leave without singing this next
Oh,
song.
let's hear. Yeah.
Because this song is important for a number of different reasons. First of all, the man who wrote the song is Ralph Chaplin. Some of you may have heard of him. He was a wobbly, he was a poet, he was a graphic artist, and he wrote Solidarity Forever, as everybody is aware. And that song, Solidarity Forever, was put to the tune of John Brown's Body, which is obviously an abolitionist hymn. This next song was also put to an abolitionist hymn by the name of Nellie Gray. This was a song written by Benjamin Hanby in 1856 and was actually a popular abolitionist ballad, and I'm sure that the choice was not accidental, that in fact Ralph Chaplin was well aware of its significance. He wrote this song in 1917 in the, you might say, in the turmoil of the Russian Revolution, and he'd been imprisoned along with 100 other wobblies for opposing U.S. entry into World War I, and upon his release, this published a book of poetry called When the Leaves Come Out, which contained this song, and it's called The Commonwealth of Toil. In the gloom of mighty cities, mid the roar of whirling wheels, we are toiling on like chattel slaves of old. And our masters hope to keep us ever thus beneath their heels, and to coin our very lifeblood into gold. But we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will seem, when each one can live their life secure and free. When the earth is owned by labor, and there's joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be. They would keep us cowed and beaten, cringing meekly at their feet. They would stand between each worker and his bread. Shall we yield our lives up to them for the bitter crust sweet? Shall we only hope for heaven when we're dead? But we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will seem, when
labor and there's joy and peace for all in the Commonwealth of Toil that is to be. They have laid our lives out for us to the other end of time. Shall we stagger on beneath their heavy load? Shall we let them live forever in their gilded halls of crime, with our children doomed to toil beneath their gold? But we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will seem when each one can live their life secure and free. When the earth is owned by labor and there's joy and peace for all in the Commonwealth of Toil that is to be. When our cause is all triumphant and we claim our Mother Earth, and the nightmare of the present fades away, we shall live with love and laughter, we who now are little worth, and will not regret the price we have to pay. Yes, we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will seem when each one can live their life secure and free. When the earth is owned by labor and there's joy and peace for all in the Commonwealth of Toil that is to be.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
It's 5 o'clock?
Five,
It's scheduled till 5:30. You can sing more.
Oh, 5:30?
5:30,
yes.
Oh, I thought it was 5 o'clock.
Seriously, yeah, it's right here, you can.
Oh, well then we'll go on if you don't mind. Yay! All right, we'll have to find another rousing conclusion. You gotta take off.
I have to go, love you guys.
All right.
Great.
Thank you,
Call
Rich.
me before you go back.
Okay, we'll do,
Together.
we'll do, yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
thanks so much.
Well, if we can go on, that was just sort of a little break. It's all right, that was
It's
the,
just a really,
that was
really
the
long
hour-long
encore.
show. Now we're gonna go the encore, okay.
Matt, I wonder if you would be available, there might be people here who have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I thought
Well,
so,
if you'd
yeah.
like, yeah. Any comments, questions?
Where are you playing again?
On the 14th at Down Home Music in El Cerrito.
Ooh.
And on the 17th at the Green Arcade in, on
Market
Coffin
Street.
Market Street.
Yeah.
Right station.
Well, seriously, if anybody wants to, you have a question.
Couple. One is, I'm gonna give, three things I'm gonna say. First of all, with the Commonwealth of Toil, we in the Labor Corps are singing it, but there is one line that I won't sing, and that is, the earth is owned by all. I would like for us to have a socialist idea that the earth isn't owned by anybody. The other one is that I want to say a couple of things. Most of us here are atheists. I'm atheist, but I'm still going to say this because I'm the Justice Ambassador from a faith-based institution, and it is for you. I want to tell you, your singing, it is as if your song goes to heaven. The gates open up. Your words of asking for help go into the Holy of Holies, and there is Hashem sitting, and what you sing goes into Hashem's ear and moves Hashem's heart. I rarely say that, but the passion you have, there's a word we have in Hebrew and it means representative, and I feel that when you sing, you are the representative of us. And I want to say for you, Matt, that these people, we have honorifics, Jewish honorifics, and you've heard me say this at the Loretta Starbustack. Most of the time we say, may you rest in peace. For these people, Ella May Wiggins, Molly Jackson, I say it first in English and then in Hebrew. This is, rarely do we say this. May the memory of the righteous be for a blessing. And then I'm going to say, Librakat Sadiq. Sadiq Librakat. Anyway, I forget what it is, but I'm gonna
Get
say
the
thank
idea.
you,
Thank
yeah, for
you.
these songs.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I also think that it's an interesting question about honoring and respecting these people, which was in fact why we did the project. But it was also in a context of the election of Trump and his taking over these songs. We could have chosen songs from other places. There were songs written by workers all over the United States at that time. In the 1930s, it was a huge upsurge of working class struggle. But it was particularly to choose these songs because this is Trump country, and Kentucky and places like this. But this is the real history that they want to bury. They don't want those people who are still coal mining or whatever to know that this is what their actual heritage really is. So it's extremely important not only to honor these people, but to bring them back to life in a sense, in the context of today's situation. So on the one hand, it is an honoring. On the other hand, it's an honoring that is combative. Let's put it that way.
Yes, it's made a memory of the righteous. It's not just acknowledging them,
Right.
saying, yes, you are righteous. And what you're doing is what the Bay Area Labor Course has done and other labor courses, take these songs to educate people.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. Right, that's it, that's the point. I think the other thing is that, as I said, somewhere along the line in here, one of the sort of subtexts of this is this whole question of what American music is, what popular culture is, and all of the you might say ramifications that come from the dominance of the music industry and the way it's manipulated what has actually arisen spontaneously from amongst the people. And so these songs are examples of this, something that arose from amongst the people, that was shared by people, but at the exact same time was being replaced by the music industry. And I'm talking about right in the 1920s when people were going into the South collecting these songs to sell them as pop music back to the people. And so there's a subtext in here of all these songs, many of which were actually popular hits. They were not all religious songs. Some came from the church. May Wiggins' Mill Mother's song, that one we sang earlier, was actually, she took that song from a song by Vernon Dalhart, released in 1927, which was a pop music hit. So this is how deep some of this goes into what people think is their music and where it actually comes from. And this is one of the reasons why it's important to bring these songs back in relationship to actual human beings, because these people, all of them, with the exception of a couple songs in here that were written by professional musicians, the rest were written by workers. They had nothing to do with careers in music or trying to become stars or anything. They just wrote songs to serve the struggle that they were involved in, and that's where a lot of music actually comes from. It doesn't come from some professional or some trained or some star, which unfortunately a lot of people still believe. They're still manipulated by that idea that they need a talented somebody up there above them to give them their music, and that is exactly untrue. So that was a big part of the motivation for this, was to actually show, well, look, these are the people who actually made these songs. They're part of the American, our traditions. It's part of our history, part of our shared experience, and yet it's written out. It's just, unless you happen to get a copy of Hard-Hitting Songs for Hard-Hit People, which is actually still available, you wouldn't know about it, and it's basically available in the academy. It's available for musicologists or folklorists or things like that. It's not something that is widely
But it was also a
disseminated.
custom for everybody who was a worker to sing. They sang all day, all the time. Whenever they had something difficult or heavy, work, whatever, or when they were happy and joyful, they always sang, and that's also why they started writing their own words to already existing songs. Yeah. And that's something that has gotten forgotten, in our lives. We don't sing enough anymore.
Speaking of which, you want to do that one?
No, I would, but I don't know.
Can we do this one?
Yes.
All right. This is another one from
I don't know how
John
much
Hancock.
time we have, and there are so many good songs.
All right.
Maybe I'll get to the other one later.
All right. Well, the thing is, this song that we're about to do was also by John Handcox, and again taken from some old song, probably an old slave song by Jeannie. But it is so apropos. I mean, when you hear this song, it could have been written yesterday.
Oh.
It literally is now. It's called "There Is Mean Things Happening in This Land."
There is mean things happening in this land. There is mean things happening in this land. Oh, the rich man boasts and brags, while the poor man goes in rags. There is mean things happening in this land. There is mean things happening in this land. There is mean things happening in this land. Oh, the farmer cannot eat, 'cause he's raised too much wheat. There is mean things happening in this land. There is mean things happening in this land. There is mean things happening in this land. Too much cotton in our sacks, so we have none on our backs. There is mean things happening in this land. Oh yeah! There is mean things happening in this land. There is mean things happening in this land. Lots of groceries on the shelves, but we have none for ourselves. There is mean things happening in this land. Oh yeah! There is mean things happening in this land. There is mean things happening in this land. But when workers let loose to be blinded and abused, there'll be good things happening in this land. Let me hear you say yeah. There'll be good things happening in this land. There'll be good things happening in this land. When the workers take a stand and unite in a solid band, there'll be good things happening in this land. When the workers take a stand and unite in a solid band, there'll be good things happening in this land. Woo! Yeah.
One more.
Yeah, I'd like to do A Fool There Was. Where is it?
All right, there it is.
There.
Okay, this one is also extremely timely. Don't know who wrote it. It was given credit to by somebody named Joseph Brandon. We could not find who this person was. Maybe didn't exist. You never know. I mean, these songs could have been circulating around and somebody put a name on it. I have no idea. Really did a lot to try to find out who he was. But the song had to be included because it is right on time. It's called A Fool There Was.
A fool there was and he had no job, even as you and I. And he didn't want to steal or rob, even as you and I. And so each day
till it nearly got it right in two, even as you and I. He voted for what he thought was change, even as you and I. When nothing did, he thought it strange, even as you and I. But though the promises lost their shine, he couldn't help thinking it oh so kind. They saved him a place in the old suit line, even as you and I. He watched depression growing worse, even as you and I. As bankers looted the public purse, even as you and I. They told him this was a country grand, with plenty of everything in the land. So he starved to death with a flag in his hand, even as you and I.
Well, you want to do Dreadful Memories then?
I'm too upbeat for the song.
Okay. All right. Well, here's speaking of religion. Speaking of religion. This is a song that is taken directly from Luke. Everybody knows Luke, St. Luke. And it's the ballad of the story of Lazarus and Dives. This is in the Bible. You can check it out. This is very, very authentic. And we don't know where this song came from, although I was able to locate a recording of a young woman, that Alan Lomax actually recorded singing part of this song, recorded in like 1927 or something like that. And it seems you'll probably follow me here. It's probably an old Scottish or Irish song because they used a lot of very nonsense words. This is very common in these cultures. And this song is nonsense. It's called Skinnamalink-a-Dooley. And this was in hard-hitting songs for hard-hit people. And it's your religion for the day. Okay. There was a rich man and he lived in Jerusalem. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
He wore a silk hat and his coat was very spruce. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
I rode Jerome, I rode Jerome. Skinnamalink-a-dooley, skinnamalink-a-dooley. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
And at his gate there sat a human requiem. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
He wore a bowler hat and the ring was round his neck. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
I rode Jerome, I rode Jerome. Skinnamalink-a-dooley, skinnamalink-a-dooley.
Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
The poor man asked for a piece of bread and cheesy. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
The rich man answered, a call for a police. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
I rode Jerome, I rode Jerome. Skinnamalink-a-dooley, skinnamalink-a-dooley. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
The poor man died and his soul went to heaven. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
And he danced with the saints till 11:15. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
I rode Jerome, I rode Jerome. Skinnamalink-a-dooley, skinnamalink-a-dooley. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
And there he dwelt in Abraham's bosom. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
Fraternizing there with scores of other Susie. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
I rode Jerome, I rode Jerome. Skinnamalink-a-dooley, skinnamalink-a-dooley. Glory, hallelujah, I rode Jerome.
The rich man died, but he didn't fare so well. Glory, hallelujah,
I rode Jerome.
He couldn't go to heaven, so he had to go to hell. Glory, hallelujah,
I rode Jerome. I rode Jerome. I rode Jerome. Still my Lincoln, still my Lincoln, glory hallelujah. I rode Jerome.
The rich man asked for to have a consolium, glory hallelujah. I rode Jerome.
The devil only answers to shuffle on the coleum, glory hallelujah. I rode Jerome.
I rode Jerome. I rode Jerome. Still my Lincoln, still my Lincoln, glory hallelujah. I rode Jerome.
The moral of the story is that riches are no jokium, glory hallelujah. I rode Jerome. We'll all go to heaven because we are stony brokium, glory hallelujah. I rode Jerome.
I rode Jerome. I rode Jerome. Still my Lincoln, still my Lincoln, glory hallelujah. I rode Jerome.
Glory hallelujah.
I rode Jerome.
We have.
Almost 15 minutes.
Oh, 50 minutes. Okay, great.
Okay.
We'll go on then. We'll go on. We'll go on. We'll go on. Well, you want to do it now? Let's do this one.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, this is one everybody knows here, I think. But what you don't know is the story behind it. The Preacher and the Slave is the most famous song by Joe Hill. And Joe Hill is another one of our heroes, of course, coming from an earlier generation than most of the people we've referred to so far. The Preacher and the Slave was actually first sung, according to all the research we could find, not by Joe Hill, but by Harry McClintock. And this is one of the most interesting tales connecting all these things together. Because if anybody saw O Brother, Where Art Thou, you will know that Big Rock Candy Mountain features prominently in the movie. It's a song on the soundtrack album. That was by Harry McClintock. And Harry McClintock actually ended up dying in San Francisco in 1957, doing a radio show on KFRC, if you can believe that. But he started out as a wobbly and as a busker, singing songs. Was up in Seattle, met Portland, I think it was Portland. Met Joe Hill. Joe Hill handed him the lyrics to the song on the back of a laundry ticket and said, "Go sing this." And why did he tell him to go sing it? Because what was happening at that time was that the IWW, Industrial Workers of the World, were organizing these speakings. They would go out and they were fighting a free speech movement in Portland, Seattle, Spokane, various places where they were organizing miners and dock workers and so on and so forth. And the bosses got the idea of sending down the Salvation Army to play right next to them and drown them out, right? So they were singing these Christian hymns next to the speakers that were trying to command the crowd's attention. So the Wobblies got the idea, we will write the song lyrics to the songs they're singing and drown them out. So the Preacher and the Slave is to the Sweet By and By, which is a classic Christian hymn. Sung to this day. The Sweet By and By has been sung by Elvis Presley. I mean, this is a classic Christian hymn. And that's where the Preacher and the Slave actually began and came from. And it explains the references to the Starvation Army, which you'll hear in the song. This is the Preacher and the Slave, and anybody who knows it can join right in.
Long-haired preachers come out every night, try to tell you what's wrong and what's right. But when there's about something to eat, they will answer in voices so sweet. You will leave by and by, and that glorious land above the sky. You'll get high in the sky when you fly. And the Starvation Army they play, and they sing and they clap and they pray, till they get all your corn on the ground. Then they tell you when you are on the bum, yeah, you will leave by and by. You'll get high in the sky when you die. And if you fight hard for children and wives, try to
you're a sinner and bad men they tell. When you die, you're sure go to hell.
You will leave, by and by, in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live all day. You'll get by in the sky when you die.
Now working man of all countries unite. Side by side we for freedom will fight. When the world and its worth we have gained, to the rafters we'll sing this refrain.
You will leave,
by and by,
when you've learned how to cook and how to fry. Chop some wood, it'll and you'll leave in the sweet by and by. And you'll leave in the sweet by and by. Hey!
Bye-bye.
We have a couple more here. And we did a rousing end to the song. What did we cut out? We cut out a couple here.
Okay, your pick fell down.
Maybe,
Yeah, that's all right, I'll get it.
maybe it's time for dreadful now.
Is it?
Yeah. No.
Okay, yeah,
We
sure.
also have books or so, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, then we gotta
Actually,
do the
thank you.
plug. Thank you. Books and CDs are for sale. What we're singing is all recorded there, so you can take it home with you and scare your children. No, anyway, this next song is a classic example of a very popular song being turned by Sarah Ogan Gunning into a really powerful fighting song. It's based on Precious Memories, which is a song that is sung to this day at funerals and memorials and things of that nature. It's still actually a fairly popular song, Precious Memories. Sarah Ogan Gunning wrote it, Dreadful Memories. Let's see.
Dreadful memories, how they linger, how they ever flood my soul, how the workers and their children die from hunger and from cold. Hungry fathers, wearied mothers, living in those dreadful shacks. Little children cold and hungry, with no clothing on their backs. Dreadful gun thugs and stew pigeons always flock around our door. What's the crime that we've committed? Nothing, only that we're poor. When I think of all the heartaches and all the things that we have been through, oh, then I wonder how much longer and what a working man can do. We will live to join the union. They will help you find a way how to get a better living, and for your work get better pay. Really, friends, it doesn't matter whether you are black or white. The only way you'll ever change things is fight and fight and fight. Thank you.
We'll bring this to a close, but this time we're going to do a song that wasn't in this repertoire, and it's for a special reason, and that is that 100 years ago, Pete Seeger was born. He was responsible for putting together the collection from which we drew these songs, or he was one of the contributing parts of that. And I think that in many ways, his example as a song collector and as a radical fighter for the people should be an inspiration to us today.
And I'm so honored I got to meet him personally. That was really a treat. Yeah. Thank you. I enjoyed that.
He wrote to me personally.
Oh, good.
If I had a hammer,
If I had a hammer,
I'd hammer in the morning,
I'd hammer in the morning, hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters. Oh, over this land.
if I had a bell,
If I had a bell,
I'd ring it in the morning,
I'd ring it in the morning, ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out a warning, I'd ring out love between my brothers and my sisters. Oh, over this land.
if I had a song,
If I had a song,
I'd sing it in the morning,
sing it in the morning, sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out a warning, I'd sing out love between my brothers and my sisters.